All right, everyone. This is your boy Des the King, back yet again with another episode of King Talk TV. Today, I have a special guest, special friend that I met kind of just randomly online, but I liked what he was talking about in regards to a book that I just completed called "Thank God for Bitcoin." He has a video on his channel that he was reviewing that book, and I sent a message to him in his comments, said, "Hey, I would love to interview you on my podcast." He reached out right back and said yes. So now we're here. No other than Jordan. Jordan, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here today. We just spent a few minutes chopping it up before we hit the record button, and I can already tell this is going to be a great next hour or so. We see how long we got, and we're basically just going to talk about Bitcoin and how it relates to Christians, believers, and what is going to happen with Bitcoin, and how is this going to intertwine with the end times, with the rapture, with the Antichrist. Like, how is all this going to tie in together with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general? So that's kind of the topic that we're going to try to stick to today, but we may bounce around. Stay and watch to the end. I think this is going to be a great conversation. But Jordan, thank you again for joining me today. How are you doing?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad that you decided to reach out to me. I mean, this is, I think, a really important topic when it comes to Christians and just money in general. As we were just doing some preamble before the recording, how not just people, but Christians as well, really kind of get, I think finance in general is something that, it's something either a lot of us don't really want to think about, or if we do, it's just, we think of it in very instant occasions. We just want it and it'll solve all of our problems, right? But there's obviously so much more to it than that. So hopefully you guys get value out of this, right? Value for your audience, and maybe, they'll stumble upon some stuff that they didn't know about before as we unpack these topics. I feel like this is something that we could go on for 4 hours about, right? But of course, in 1 hour, we'll do the best we can with hacking and slashing the review that was done on that book and everything finance related and everything to do with crypto.
Right. We depending on how this goes, man, we may have to do a part 2, but we'll try to get it all together in this short time. But thank you for all that, Jordan. And before we press record, we went through a number of things about how we believe the church needs to be. I think we both believe the church needs to be way more financially literate, and it seems to be like a lot of ignorance in the church in regards to financial matters, what's going on with our monetary system, the money printing, inflation, the whole nine. Those are foreign words, not just to believers, but just to people in general. They just don't know really what's going on as far as our economy goes. And just like the Bible says, ignorance is what destroys people. So we're just going to, again, just go through ranging topics, talking about Bitcoin, which is Bitcoin seems to be the number one currency. Well, it is the number one currency, but people hate it, people love it, people don't know what it is. And yeah, so Jordan, let's talk about Bitcoin. Let's talk about your background. How long have you been a believer? What got you into cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and yeah, let's talk about that for a few moments.
Yeah, so I guess just for starters, I am a ticketed plumber, and I'm in the shipbuilding industry. So I'm part of a company. We build non-combat vessels for the Canadian Navy and Coast Guard. So I've been doing that for the past 6 years. That's certainly not something I ever thought I would get into once I actually started plumbing. I started my apprenticeship in 2010, got fully ticketed in 2014. And then about a year after that, that's when I got into shipbuilding. And like I said, never thought I'd get into it. And, I first heard about crypto actually. It was at work. It was probably around 2017 when I think crypto probably, you're right, it hit its peak right somewhere. I forget exactly when in 2017 it got up to like $17,000 to $20,000, and then it kind of crashed back down for a good period of time. So I heard a couple of guys at work talking about it, but at the time I really wasn't following finance. I wasn't following really much of any of that kind of stuff. And I don't know, it's almost similar to social media like websites growing up, right? I mean, I was asked to be part of, right, like MySpace, Nexopia. When I heard about Facebook, it was like, it's just another iteration of something I'm already a part of, right? But then lo and behold, Facebook becomes it's had the longevity as opposed to all those other ones that I just spoke about. And I guess, right, crypto and not really understanding really how the money system works. I just sort of brushed it off and didn't really think too much of it until probably last year, until like I actually started to get a lot more interested about finance and wanting to actually do something I had always wanted to do, which was like have a YouTube channel and just be able to talk about these things, right? So, I mean, I've wanted to do a YouTube channel on the topics of entertainment, sports, astronomy, politics, right? So all wide-ranging topics. And I finally landed on finance, and then I ended up changing the name of my channel from the Storybook Wealth Builder, which is strictly finance, to Fandom Finance, which is meant to incorporate an aspect of like pop culture. As I'm a big Marvel geek, Star Wars geek. I like all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just thought that would be kind of a cool idea to have a bit of a split channel in regards to all that. So anyway, more to come on that regard.
Cool, man. Cool. So yeah, you got into crypto 2017 at the top of the market. It's probably the worst time to get in. Well, did you say you got in like at the very top, or was
no? I just right. So I had people around me who were throwing their money into it, and right, guys were winning, guys were losing. It was just, you could see that this was clearly an emotional battle with people. And I just hands up, I was like, you know what, man, I'm like, right, I don't want anything to do with that. That looks scary. I mean, I always, like, at that time I thought stocks were scary, right? Anytime I'd go over to, right, if I went over to someone's house and the news was on, you'd see like the bottom chyron with, right, you would see the Dow and the S&P and the TSX and all these ticker symbols and all these green marks, red marks, up and down, up and down. I just thought, there's no way I could get into any of that stuff. I just thought that that's not for me. It looks confusing, and that I should leave that to the professionals to figure that out for me if I was to ever get into that. So no, I didn't get into it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, and funny because my story is similar as far as leaving it to the experts. As far as Bitcoin goes, when Robinhood first got popular, I did mess around with that, buy some random stocks and hold it in Robinhood, and it goes up 1% in 2 months. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm an investor. Look, I made a little bit of gain, so. But yeah, but as far as when I first heard about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, it was around 2017. But like you, I didn't really know all the. I didn't even know how regular finance worked. Especially how am I supposed to know how cryptocurrency and all this stuff works? So I didn't do my due diligence on Bitcoin then, and and I'm paying for that now, because if I did then, I'll be way better now. We both would be,
Yeah.
obviously.
The thing with right, it's like I remember this is something like my dad always reiterated to me, like growing up, right? And my dad's been in the real estate sphere for a long time, but I remember he would always tell me, just growing up, he's like, listen, Jordan, if you're around people or there's something going on that you don't quite understand, but it looks like it has value, if there's value to it, like, right, like eavesdrop in on that and get to know that. Like you would, it's amazing how showing 5 minutes of interest can totally transform the trajectory of your life, in a sense, right? So I ended up doing that with someone I work with. We ended up working very closely together, having desks closely together, and I knew this particular individual was like highly regarded in our work, as far as going as someone to go to for stock market advice. And I just kind of dropped a few questions about it, and I mean, honestly, the rest is history. It's never, you'll be surprised with what you don't know, and then when it comes to the things you start to understand, it's just a rabbit hole from there. And I'm so glad I started asking those questions about finance in the first place. And I probably maybe not necessarily would have done that if it really wasn't for, like I said, my dad just kind of beating that into my eardrum about, right, just show a little interest, and you never know what you might learn, right? And it could be just from the most unlikeliest of people, the unlikeliest. So, right, it's the old saying, don't judge the book by its cover, and just be open to what you don't know.
That's a good that's a good story. I wish I would have heard that too. And yeah, you got to leave your heart open to, all it takes is just a little bit of research can, like you say, take you down a path that can change your whole life for the better, and that's really a good story, and thank you for sharing that. So how exactly in detail did you find out about Bitcoin? Who told you? Where were you? What was going on in your life when you first heard about Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, so right, my first experience was that 2017 scenario, and honestly, I just paid no attention to it. Then I would say you fast forward to 2020, right? The virus hit, and right, like the way that the pandemic has turned out, as far as society is concerned, I grew up watching zombie movies and virus movies. I was always into that, just into like dystopian, survival horror type stuff growing up. And I started looking around, right? Because I'm a pop culture, fanboy. I was like, wow, none of this stuff has like actually turned out like in reality, like in these movies, like there is no stock market anymore, right? It's survival of the fittest. But no, in this scenario, like in real life, like the stock market just shot up. Well, it went down for a couple of weeks, right? Steep declines, 30% across the entire market on average, and then it rocketed back up. And then by the end of, I guess it was around this time last year, it, like the S&P or TSX in Canada, they had plateaued. They regained everything that they had lost, like from back in February of 2020. And it was around this time, again, I started to get into finance, and I was reading a bunch of books before I was probably reading for about 7 weeks before I invested my first dollar into the stock market, right? I really wanted to be sure that what I was about to do, like I wasn't going to do this with a haughty attitude, that I wasn't going to do this with ego, that it's very important, right? How important is it for emotions to not be part of your evaluating experience when it comes to stocks? And so, and then into January of this past year, and then February, I was just talking to my wife's cousin, who he's a missionary, And we were talking about Bitcoin, and I was just telling him about, like, I'm really happy I got into finance, and it's you're right. I've always been a good saver. So I was actually able to start investing with like a good chunk of money, right? Was always a good saver, but just never did anything with it. Nothing. So I had a very desirable scenario of being able to deploy capital into the market at a pretty considerable level for just being a beginner. Certainly slow and steady, because I was very aware that I just did not want to have my ego thinking I was better than I actually was, right? It was a rising market. It pretty much didn't almost matter where you put your money, you would be winning no matter what. But it was around that time I was speaking to him, and he had told me about, thank God for Bitcoin. So it's like I had that experience in 2017, and I thought, well, I really don't understand crypto at all. There's nothing about crypto I understand. And you know what? And we fast forward to this conversation, there's still plenty of things about crypto and videos I watch. Like I know Graham Stefan just had a video about crypto, and he was even just saying, like, for a guy with 3+ million subscribers, even he's like, yeah, I'm working up to put 8% into my crypto account and keep 8% on the side. And even he's still like, well, I'm still trying to figure out what crypto is, right? It's still like we're all trying. It's like the pre-dawn of the internet. We're trying to figure out together like how this is going to impact us into the future. But yeah, I listened to the book, and I listened into it in its podcast format. As my drive in the morning to work is about 45 minutes. Going home is about 2 hours, right, in the greater Vancouver area. So it's crazy. So I listened to that book in the span of like 2 days. I put it on repeat, listened to it again. It was so fascinating. And that's where, and what I was really surprised about, thank God for Bitcoin, is I really thought it was going to be a book primarily and wholeheartedly about the rise of Bitcoin, everything to do with Bitcoin. But instead, what I more or less got out of it was, 2/3 of that book is dedicated to the history of, well, I would say 1/3 dedicated to the history of how currencies came to be, how they evolved. 1/3 of the book dedicated to our current financial system. And wow, did that open my eyes to what I truly did not understand about our current financial system. There are so many buzzwords, the lingo about so many things in finance that you almost just want to give up hearing it, right? Like when someone says, like, like, what's the yield on that stock? I mean, we almost need like the Urban Dictionary, as yield is just a paycheck, right? It's just a paycheck, right? So people understand that, but when they hear yield, it's right, for just the average Joe out there, that's right, that's like white collar talk. It totally has no bearing on how regular people talk about just everyday occurrences. So I think a lot of that confusion is just wrapped up in the language of finance. And so unpacking that then becomes, just like reading, it becomes a form of power, because it's going to give you much more opportunities and leverage that education.
Right. And the education, that's the key word right there. And the schools are not necessarily going to educate you on this. This is all I learned.
Don't send your kids to public school thinking that they're going to learn about anything financial related. Forget Bitcoin. Forget how our monetary system works, and forget budgeting. Those kinds of things do not come, right? Yeah. So we as like, I got two boys, 5 and 3, and I mean, like, I just did a video myself regarding it's called Juju Money Lessons for Kids, where I take jars, and every night I give my boys one jube. So I give them the option. I say, you can either eat it right now for instant gratification, or you can put it in the jar. And every time they save up 5 jubes, the next night I give them 2, and they start getting 2 every night. And so once they hit 10, they get 3. Once they hit 15, they get 4 a night. Once they hit 20, they get 5 per night. And so the idea is they get to the top of the jar. And once they get to the top, they've clearly showed me that they can delay that gratification with the candy. And I will go buy them a toy. I just buy them a toy for $20. As a matter of fact, I was out with my boys today. We went to Target and we got my boy a Robo Lizard because that's what he saw on the shelf. So he had just saved up last night. And, I've done this with even my 3-year-old. Like, goodness me, my 3-year-old even understands it, right? I don't do it with money because kids don't understand money. They don't spend it. We do for them, right? But kids understand candy and they understand toys. So we got to use their motivations to teach them about money, compound interest, delayed gratification. And these are mechanisms that we can use as parents to help them get into a better situation with understanding money. And that's our job. And I wouldn't necessarily, depend on, like we said, the teachers to be teaching that in any kind of sense. Like, as a parent, I am the first, line of defense when it comes to education and life lessons and all that kind of stuff. So, right. So, getting to know finance is going to be a key part, not just, for your own financial well-being, but also for your kids as well. Like, the more you do today will ultimately benefit your kids for tomorrow. The lessons that you will learn and the things that you fail at and just learn and grow from is just something that maybe they don't necessarily have to learn the hard way. And you'll save them potentially years of understanding if you can unpack all that for yourself.
That book I recommended to you, The Bitcoin Standard.
Yes.
That he gives an example, just like what you're doing with your children. He gives an example about how to teach them delayed gratification, just like what you're doing. And that is amazing, man, how that works. And I'm sure that is impressing on them now. And when they get older, they're really going to apply that to their lives. So that's really great. That wasn't done for me. That wasn't done for me.
Well, it wasn't done for me either. Like, it wasn't done for me either. So, but I think the vast majority of us, right? Like, we're all on that same playing field, is that we are taught to sit in a classroom, be still, and regurgitate, information that we're heard, sit and listen and repeat. I mean, I was misdiagnosed with like ADHD growing up. So I was on Ritalin and all this other junk like growing up. And then it turns out like I wasn't. The second I was told I actually never had ADHD, what a turn. So that happened probably sometime in grade 6. Like, I would say the most, confident years of my schoolhood took place in grade 6 and 7. Like they just did. Like, it just finally I had that confidence in myself that I had never had before, simply being told you don't have ADHD. So it's amazing what confidence will do to you if but once you hear those words.
Yeah. Man, because what's funny about that's what I was diagnosed with as well, having ADHD. And my parents didn't want me to take any medicine for it. Thank God I didn't.
I'm happy for you, because you don't want to be like drooling over a desk and your eyes sort of half closed for the better part of a day. But
you are high, literally high in class.
Yeah. But what was right, it's just you look back on now, and I'm pretty sure, I think like for that era, like for that time, I think that's just what doctors were recommending, right? I think that was sort of, whether it was the easy out, hard to say, but that's just what my experience was, and very similar with other kids my age.
Right.
So
right. And you're right, it was that time. And no blame to them. You obviously are doing very better. Now, ADHD, even if you did have it, it wouldn't matter because you're still
Right.
doing great right now. So
That's right.
doesn't even matter. Awesome stuff, Jordan. So you got into BTC. It's okay. Bitcoin's been out for how long now? 12 years now, right?
Yeah, 2009. 2009.
Since 2009. It hasn't been stopped and probably won't be stopped for a while or ever. Maybe it won't ever be stopped till the coming of Jesus Christ, which we'll, if we get time, we'll touch on later.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
but for what do you think, man? Do you think Bitcoin is a gift from God, like the book says? Is God kind of neutral on Bitcoin? Uh, what do you think? How do you think God sees it? And how should us as believers view Bitcoin?
Well, for starters, God is against theft, right? So I think maybe that's probably where we start is, we naturally have a bias with this, with where we live, where we grow up, the kinds of experiences we have, we naturally have a bias towards those things because that's just our experience. So living in our current fiat system, we have a bias against it because that's all we know. That's all we've ever been used to. So this is something that the book really touches on heavily and this is where truly whoever's listening to this, like, please go download that book, read it for yourself. Thank God for Bitcoin, because it really is an eye opener if you're willing to listen to the arguments that it has. But anyway, so theft. The book talks about how in our current system, whether it be the federal, so I guess we'll talk, Federal Reserve, they control the inflow outflow of money. Now, just I think for starters, like we'll touch on inflation, right? This is just a word we talk about, the buzzwords, the inflation, supply chain, and right. But like, what does it all mean? Like, it really, in short, inflation is when a ton of money gets printed. It's like it's got to go somewhere, right? It doesn't just stay in bank accounts. It doesn't just stay under your grandma's couch, right? It goes out into the world. It goes out. Right? People will naturally just spend it. So the moment it starts getting out into the free market, this is where it naturally starts pushing up prices. The idea is that it's too many dollars chasing too little supply, right? So you think about it, right? More money chasing too few things that are actually being produced. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now in the world right now. Yes, there's compounding issues with supply chain, 50 vessels, tanker vessels sitting right outside just off the coast of Venice Beach in Los Angeles. And so the compounding aftershocks of COVID. So there's a bunch of things. Let's maybe rewind the clock a little bit here. 1 year ago, the Senate and the House, they had passed a bipartisan relief bill that was about $500 billion. And then as soon as Joe Biden gets in, they do what? They do basically something similar. They just doubled it. Right. It was similar. Maybe there was obviously a few tweaks in there. And I can't quite remember if that was a bipartisan effort. I think that was probably, to this point in Joe Biden's presidency, the only bipartisan effort in that regard, up until, this infrastructure bill has come along. And so you had a ton of money that was, sorry about that.
No problem.
So you had a ton of money that was just created just making its way into every single household, and people are just going to spend it, right? And what did most people spend it on? It made its way into the stock market, pushing assets even higher. But for people who don't participate in in the stock market or in crypto, those people are seeing that natural erosion of their savings simply just by holding it in their bank accounts. I'll give you another example. Hopefully this will maybe make things a little bit more concise, because this happens a lot in the stock market, right? Companies will issue out more shares just out of thin air. They can just create more shares, right? They want to fund a certain project, right? And the energy sector is very notable for this, right? They want to fund, say, maybe it is another pipeline or something very labor intensive, very expensive. And the only way that they're going to raise money is through some form of like debt. And more often than not, that ends up being through issuing out shares. So when you create more shares, you are essentially devaluing immediately, right? Like if you have 100 shares, let's just say the entire company has 100 shares, and each share is worth $10, and all of a sudden the company says, we want to build that project right outside there. Well, what we're going to do is we are going to issue out another 100 shares. Well, for the people who already own shares, their shares now become worth $5, mm-hmm. right? Like $5 a share. That's it. Simply because more was created, and that's precisely what's happening in everyone's bank accounts these days, right? So when you see, right, whether it's a year over year of inflation going up 6%, understand your $100 is now buying $94 worth of goods. And if you span that out, I think in the book it talks about coming off, and thank God for Bitcoin, it talks about coming off the gold standard in 1971, and that the purchasing power has eroded 96%. Now, that also takes into consideration that things like we've automated so many things, and certainly certain goods have become cheaper, like say cell phones, right? A cell phone in the 90s with the capabilities of an iPhone would have costed you the technology was just simply not there. It would have costed you so much money to do that. But today, 70% of the world, 70% of adults have a phone. And so that's probably a good indicator that those kinds of costs have simply just come down over time through better mechanisms and practices of producing those goods. I hope that answered the question. Might have gone off on a tangent there, but if there's something I missed, just let me know.
No, that was all great, man. And I hope you're done with your thought. I hope I'm not interrupting your thought here.
Yeah,
but yeah, like you said, but like all what you said is true. People don't realize now. I don't want to sound, because every time I have this conversation with people, I guess trying to say this in a nice way without actually calling them out, but more because I'm not left or right. I'm not part of that paradigm. You know what I mean? Right. I'm liberal on things I believe you should be more liberal on, and I'm conservative on
you know what, I 1000% agree on that. I can't tell you how often I have that exact same conversation, is that, just because you vote blue, you vote red, it doesn't mean you're red on every single issue, or you're blue on every. It's a spectrum, right? You're going to be checking the box all over the place on certain things. So
if you are claiming to be one or the other, to me, you're playing the game. You're part of the game. You know what I mean? And the reason why I think people like you and I, we're into Bitcoin is because we see the game and we want to exit out of the game. And financially, we believe that Bitcoin is the way out of the game or whatever. But my question to you, Jordan, as you were talking, and I'm assuming you was going to come back around to it, why does God like Bitcoin? Does he favor it? And why does he favor Bitcoin?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, for sure. A bit of a tangent there. Got a little
No, it was
sidetracked.
great,
But
George. Don't
yeah.
get me wrong. I
So
want you to
so
talk.
right. So with the whole idea of theft, when we have people in charge of government, when they're able to print that money, it's stealthy, right? They don't have to have the burden of being socially attacked because of whether it be to raise taxes, which is nobody likes that, of course, right? Nobody likes, their taxes being raised for any reason. So a very stealthy way of doing that is just printing money. And there really is no accountability to it. It's not like if you and I, with our monocles and our top hats, were to print money at the Federal Reserve level, if we were Janet Yellen and Shane Powell, if we were the ones doing it, we would be kind of like elbowing one another, saying, "Listen, no matter what happens, we're going to get our fat pensions. We're going to be all right. Like, we are going to be all right, and there will be no consequence to us." And that's like part of the problem right now in politics is that there are people in these positions, administrative positions, that have no accountability, right? We didn't vote them in. You didn't vote them in, right? So like they come and go, and people will just, I just mean general public, they'll forget about them. So for them, they can print the money to put a Band-Aid over certain issues, right? I mean, in regards to COVID, right? I mean, what are you going to do, right? If you're in their positions, I mean, if you did nothing, people would scorn you for it. And that seems to be sort of the main title of COVID right now. You had the governments had to do something. It doesn't matter whether it's mandates or vax this, vax or not vax, like they have to do something, because if they don't, they're going to get scorned for doing nothing. And so if you are, anyway, like I said, if you're these people, you are going to print that money because it's an easy Band-Aid. You're unaccountable. You're going to go the way, you're going to get your fat pension. But the lasting effects of that money being printed is that your theft of time. And hopefully I can explain this in a way that truly makes sense. Like if I was to show you, I don't have one in front of me, but if I was to show you $1 right now, that $1 is a representation of the time and labor you spent to acquire that, say $1, whether, or maybe $10, $20 an hour. We'll go with $20 an hour, right? Since I guess that's our standard living wage, I think, right? $20 an hour. So this $20 is a representation. It says 20 on it. It's on the screen, weird piece of paper. But that's 1 hour of your time. Like you almost got to sort of like, when you see that dollar amount, you almost got to think about, that's time. Yes, it's represented differently as far as this thing we call a dollar, and it's a commodity we can kind of trade. But really, to acquire that $1, you had to spend your time. So your time is this vessel that you can store your time in, if you want to kind of think of it that way. So when you put it in your bank, think about putting your time in the bank, right? It's a store of time. There's actually a good movie that has like a very interesting representation of this, and it's with Cry Me a River, JT, right? Justin Timberlake, In Time. So I'd recommend that movie, right? Like they have these like a digital countdown on their forearm, and when it hits 0, they die. But a cup of coffee literally costs 4 minutes. So I think that's like a really good illustration of our current systems. Think of like the money in your bank is really just a representation of the time that you spent to acquire that. So when people print money and pump more of it into the system, as we were just talking about with the stock analogy, right? It becomes devalued because there's just more of it out there. There's more of it out there. So now your time is now worth much less, even though it still says $20 on that bill. Understand subconsciously, you must understand that your time has just been stolen away from you. All that time at work and all that hard-earned savings that you've spent so much time to build that up at your job is now continually and faster and faster and faster being knocked down. I mean, I think the national deficit is somewhere between 28 and 30 trillion dollars, and a third of that was created in 2020 and 2021. So just imagine that. What has that done to your bank account? So maybe you do not have the means to invest. There's plenty of people out there that just do not have that same opportunity like you or I might, to be able to do that, to protect our time by putting it into something like the stock market, which will at least keep pace or do better depending what where you put your money in. But a dollar is a representation of time, and that, I think, is really important to understand, even when it just comes to just business in general, right? I mean, I think as hourly workers, I'm an hourly worker, so right, it's very easy to give up time for, say, money, because time is sort of this, it's not this tangible thing you can actually hold. You understand that maybe at a subconscious level you can't get it back, but I don't have to pay for time, so I'm just going to use my time to work an overtime shift or do something else, but at least I'll get money. Whereas people in business, it's the complete opposite. It's like, well, money comes and goes, but my time is so precious. There's no matter what I can do in life, I'll never get, for me, I'll never get age 30 back, specifically age 30. I'll never get it back. Never. Or 25, right? Or before I had kids, right? I'll never get that time back. So it's a flip. And really rounding this out, God does not favor theft. And when people are in positions of power that stealthily steal your time, he's not going to like that very much, right? And this is where Bitcoin comes into the equation. Bitcoin was created. It didn't just come out of nowhere, because like any tool, it comes out because it needed to solve a problem, right? And people saw what happened in 2008 when $5 trillion was just eradicated from pension funds, bank. Right? People got foreclosed on because they couldn't afford their mortgages anymore, and people lost out. But the people, right, controlling the monetary system, they didn't lose, right? The banks got bailed out, and when you look at that, you're just like, wow, how come I had to take the hit, or our parents, really, right? Or why did they have to take the hit for something that really should have been foreseen? So Bitcoin then comes along and says, listen, this thing here, right? Yes, it's an image, right, of the gold coin, right, with the BTC on it, and it was like, we want to solve that problem, right? These people over here, they think of it this way: they are the people who pick their nose, in first grade, and in some ways they're still picking their nose, and right, and giving each other wet willies, trying to figure out how to run a country, right? If you've been around a large organization, there is always more problems to solve than problems actually solved, right? And you expand that out to a federal level, what do you get? More problems than problems solved. And you have fallible people at that level that are chasing their own tails around, trying to, right, for good intentions, bad intentions, but nonetheless, it still needs a very well-oiled machine and a lot of foresight to avoid a lot of these problems. But luckily, Bitcoin comes along and basically, I would say, opens up the understanding that there is a potential way out of this. There's this adoption, and more of it will continually be adopted with the more money printed, right? The only reason that dollar has value in the first place is because we believe it has value. And in the past, shells, rubies, anything that was tangible had value if the public deemed it to be so. And so Bitcoin's just the latest iteration of all that. But it's right, but it's a good first step. And there's plenty of crypto out there, and I think it'll be interesting to see what really happens in the next few years if Bitcoin kind of holds it holds first place, or does it kind of recede like certain companies at the dawn of the internet age or information age, right? Who becomes the most durable and most trusted? So, but yeah, to sum that up, it's theft of time, and God does not like theft. So if it falls under that rubric, then God's not liking that, theft of time. So hopefully that's like a better encapsulation of why we've started to introduce Bitcoin into the conversation as a more superior money and potentially more moral money as well, because there can only be 21 million Bitcoin. It cannot be inflated. And maybe else something comes along that says otherwise, that says, well, you could maybe chop it smaller and call that a form of inflation. I don't know, but that, as far as I understand, that isn't a thing yet that I know of. So,
right. Great stuff, man. Bible verse here: you shall have, just balances and just weights. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. That's Leviticus 19:36. So, like you said, God wants just balances, like just the current system that we're in that you just talked about is not just, it really just benefits people at the top. You said before we pressed record, you talked about the Cantillon effect. I think that's the right word.
The Cantillon effect, right? Which is basically, it's like, for as far as the money printing system is concerned, it typically, the idea is that the people who benefit the most from the Cantillon effect are the people closest to that money printing machine, right? So it's the people in high positions in politics and the well-connected individuals to those politicians that typically benefit from that money printing machine. And the farther you get away from that money printing machine, that the idea is that, you know what, for the people who are not well connected and not well informed and who do not have a well-rounded understanding about finance or how inflation, even at a sort of a root elementary level, how it works, do not benefit at all, right? And that's exactly where your time is stolen.
I think about that, Jordan, like what you said about, the people, because there are going to be people here. There's someone right now at this very moment who has no financial knowledge and doesn't care to even gain financial knowledge.
Right.
And he's going to remain ignorant 10, 20 years from now. Unfortunately, that's going to be the case for a good amount of people. Fast forward 20 years from now, a Big Mac is $10. Gas is like $15 a gallon. Just ridiculous prices down the road. And I think about, man, what type of world would that be? Because you're going to have really, really ultra rich people, but you're going to have really, really poor, sad people. So I see people like me and you being okay because we see this now. So we're preparing for it in the next 20 years. But one thing, people say Bitcoin fixes everything. I don't believe that. I don't believe Bitcoin fixes everything, because down the road, there are going to be people who just didn't do the work, didn't do anything to prepare for this crisis that's coming, and it's going to be violence, and it may be violence on the way getting to that point. I mean, it's already violence now.
Yeah.
But as that gap widens, I don't see violence decreasing. I actually kind of see it getting worse and things getting actually, more crazy. But what do you think about that?
Yeah. So I agree. As far as I can see it in its current iteration, Bitcoin doesn't solve everything at the right. Like, it's still pegged to the American dollar, which means by it being pegged to the American dollar, like it sees those high levels of fluctuation, right? And people see that, and you can get people who even moderately understand finance, and of course the people who don't understand it, and they see like what happened in May. I believe it was May or June, where crypto dropped from 60,000 right down to about 37,000. And then it kind of kept tapering down to about 30. It probably bottomed out somewhere in the
Bottomed
mid.
out at 30, 29.
Yeah, 29. And then, but look where it is today. It's right back up to right where that original dip happened. And so they see, like, currency in any form can't work like that. It just cannot, right? And I believe there might be some counties, maybe I want to say one county in Florida, that I think they pay their employees, like city employees, in Bitcoin, or they have the option. I don't know if it's like they have to take it, but they have that option to have it in Bitcoin.
The mayor wants
I'd be curious to know, like, what percent of people actually took that, because, I would say, just for myself, in some aspects, I'd be like, whoa, like, I mean, if I knew it was if I'm getting paid 60,000 today, and knowing that it could easily take a sharp dive tomorrow, well, of course there's that hesitancy to simply just take it outright, knowing that it has these crazy fluctuations. So any currency just cannot be fluctuating right then. I think part of the problem is, of course, it's not its own, say, standard, say, in the United States per se, or in Canada, right? We're not on the Bitcoin standard. We're on the, American dollar standard, the Canadian dollar standard. So as long as it's pegged to something, it probably will continue to, there'll probably be some sort of guise of skepticism around it. Right now, it was meant to be a currency, but right now it's a store of value. People are using it as an asset to protect themselves against inflation. Right. So it right now, in its current form, it's not being used for what it was intended to do. Right. It's still got some growing up to do, and still some pains to work out for what has been envisioned for it. But in its current form, it will, it's simply just going to remain a store of value until that day comes when, right, like all the fiat systems of the past are, right, and the people themselves are like, this green paper is not worth what it used to be. And as disappointing as that is, right, that's when people probably start adopting Bitcoin in more larger quantities, especially amongst like an older population. So I don't, hard to say when that day eventually comes, but I think, you're still going to see a lot more unrest as people become a lot more disenchanted with, the current state of affairs, right? Especially whether it be political divisions or just class divisions. And right, like now it's medical divisions, or vaccine divisions, right? I mean, it's like the list seems endless. We can create divisions amongst people in any regard, right? Like, we're going to keep, as long as as until the day Jesus comes, we are going to be fighting over everything under the sun, right? Today it's today it's vaccines. Tomorrow, who knows what it's going to be? Hard to say, but we're going to be in that fight. And actually, for yourself, you shared a really good just passage there in Leviticus, and I just wanted to share something with people here, right? Which is just talking about the great commandment and the great commission, right? For especially as Christians in the world, as much as we're talking about finance here, but in Matthew, I believe it, Matthew 22, 36 to 39, the commandment, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And second is love your neighbor as yourself. And then in Matthew 28, 18 to 20, the Great Commission, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. So at the end of the day, if you're going to boil down the entire Christian walk, you can probably boil down to those three things. And, no matter what type of division, we're going to have it no matter what, right? And in the amongst of trying to figure out, especially even in this conversation, right? And there's going to be, of course, people who don't want to even be open to the fact that, well, I just want to stick with, the green paper money versus Bitcoin. It's just what you don't understand. And look what happens. Hopefully this episode has transformed people's maybe opinions about how to think about Bitcoin and time. But no matter what, in amongst of all those problems with our current fiat system and how does Bitcoin become more readily adopted, and truly will that happen despite say people in positions of power knowing that they're not going to want that. They're not going to want us to go on a Bitcoin standard, because on a Bitcoin standard, I'm sure we'll get to, but there's more ways that potentially can have them kept more accountable on a Bitcoin standard. But no matter what, our job as Christians is still profess the good word, spread the news, and love your God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? No matter what. And part of this is, as we do, share insights about finance to the best of our abilities. We don't have it, we're both not, right? We're not, I believe, right? I didn't actually ask what your formal work is, but, I'm not in the finance, right? I'm not a white collar worker. I put on a red hard hat every day and just get to work and build ships. But finance interests me, and I'm sure glad I got into it, because it has totally changed just how I think about things I never understood before, right? Time and money in general.
Awesome, man. And by the way, I'm an auditor for a company, and I just sit behind a desk all day, so I'm not out there in the trenches like you are.
Yeah,
I respect what you do, man.
Yeah.
My godfather is actually a plumber, and
Yeah.
back when I was a kid, short story. Back when I was a kid, he would take me and my little brother out with him to do plumbing work, and it's hard work. But what he was trying to get us to see was that, if you go to school, you could work in the office and you don't have to be out here, sweating and stuff like that. So, and I don't think he was necessarily putting the plumber occupation down, but I guess he felt like, this is all he had. This is all he had. He could do. I can't do anything. I couldn't do anything else. But anyway, good stuff, man. And like you said, the verses you shared, the 2 laws that Jesus gave, that's essentially all what we should be doing. You know, we should be loving God, loving ourselves, and loving our neighbors. And yeah, and I just feel like, you know, Bitcoin and anything that's not just Bitcoin, anything that's true, anything that's rooted in truth, that is truth, God favors and God is going to support. If it's true, then God supports it. You know, truth is not going to contradict itself. You know what I mean? So I believe that Bitcoin is the foundation of it is built on truth. The nodes, the miners, it's an amazing invention. And to me, and I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. To me, it makes me think about the intellect of God even more and how grand it is for a man, or we think it's one man, or it could be a group of people, or a female, but let's just say it was just one guy was able to piece together the concept of this technology that we call Bitcoin. And it's just, you know, the best technology ever. You know, it has us talking about it right now. And it makes me think about, man, how much more the intellect of God, you know, for
Totally.
you know what I mean? So how much more wiser, how much more grand is God if a man can come up with something like this? You know, what can God come up with?
Right.
That's what it makes me think about.
Yeah, I think that's totally true too. Is like sometimes I've certainly been in situations where, you know, God has revealed something to me and I know he's probably like laughing at me, you know, in like a very you know how, you know, you're like with kids, right? Kids sometimes put a few like they'll put a string of words together that like nobody would ever, like nobody in the right mind would think about putting together. And like as a parent, you laugh at how like how charming and enduring that is. Like, you know, your kid, like my kid's learning to talk and they're trying to string these words together. They think they're like at their level, they think they're just the smartest, like most intelligent, like nothing can overwhelm that moment for them. But like as a parent, you're just like, oh man, that's great. Just wait till but you're endured to that, right? And I think that's how like God sees us when we do these things, right? Even like when it's something as simple as, you know, like say as a plumber, right? Like I like building things. So when like a rough-in for a bathroom is done and I'm just like, wow, not bad. I mean, you know, compared to like where I maybe was in the say first year of my profession to say now, I mean, it's just totally different. And I think, you know, it certainly can work in our everyday lives where it's as complicated as Bitcoin or as simple as maybe forcing yourself as an introvert to say hello. If you work in a place like say Walmart, right? Like, which I actually used to work at, by the way. So yeah, so I think God truly has a way of kind of looking at us with, you know, with say an endearing love, knowing that like of course he could do it in like, right, like a Thanos snap, he could just poof, right, and like he could create whatever. But yeah, I'm sure he smiles at us thinking like, yeah, I mean, not bad guys, not bad, right?
Not bad.
Right,
Not
right,
bad.
right. It's just like, because I think like you know, I don't know, I've been thinking more about that a lot lately, than I've been telling more people about it. Like, you know, just thinking about God's sense of humor and how like he obviously created us with it, so no doubt he has it too,
No.
right? Like no doubt, there's no way that he doesn't have it, right? If we can smile, of course he smiles. If we crack a joke about something, he's probably just maybe rolling his eyes and being like, yeah, that's kind of funny.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
Funny
So
what you said, man. He, like, you know, Satoshi, let's just say he's a believer. He said, God, look what I made. Look what I
yeah,
created. God's just like, not bad. That's all right, right
Yeah,
there.
totally. He's like, you understand who you're talking to here, right? And
Yeah, right,
like, right.
right,
I created the ground you walk upon, right?
right,
Like,
right,
right. So if you didn't have that ground to walk upon, there wouldn't be like a Bitcoin to create, right? So,
right. Right. If it wasn't for me, it wouldn't be. I gave you reason to reason this.
yeah,
So yeah, man. Great stuff, Jordan. So yeah, let's just move on real quick.
sure.
Let's fast forward. I sent you this as two questions. I wanted to talk about the rapture, and I wanted to talk about the Antichrist.
Yeah.
But I guess it's kind of hard. I couldn't think of a way to ask those as two different questions. So I'm just going to combine them into one.
Yeah, like when I first read that, I was like, oh, there wasn't a question mark in that email in regards to. So I just figured, well, we'll just see where this goes.
Right. And I guess it's not really a straightforward question. It's just more so like what role do you think Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is going to play in those times? Like, I don't know if you are a pre-millennial, mid-rapture person. I'm more of a mid type of trib rapture guy. So
Right.
I think that believers are going to experience, some radical tribulation before Jesus Christ comes. And some people think that we're not going to experience that at all, that we're going to be taken from that. I don't necessarily believe that. But before I let you speak, regardless of what time you think Jesus is coming back to rapture his church, how do you think the Antichrist, if you even believe the Antichrist is going to be an actual figure, a man or a woman? Some people believe the Antichrist is just symbolic for humanity taking on that spirit, but not actually a physical person. I think it's going to be an actual person.
Right.
And if it is an actual person, how do you think Bitcoin plays a role in that world, and how it relates to the verse in Revelation? You cannot buy or sell anything unless you have the mark of the beast. So does Bitcoin tie in with the mark of the beast? Is the Antichrist going to use it? Is there going to be a whole nother coin that the Antichrist is going to use to get people to subject to that system? Just tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, sure. So like I'll just share two passages with you and we'll kind of maybe define our terms and then kind of we'll see where that goes from there. How about that? So first off, we should also be careful when we talk about end times, right? Like when we are so sure that there are end times coming or we are living in end times. So Mark 13:32-33 says, but about the day or the hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, nor, but only the Father. Be on guard, be alert, be aware. You don't know when that time will come. And then in 1 John 2-22, just says, who is the liar? It is whoever denies Jesus is the Christ. Such a person is the Antichrist, denying the Father and the Son. So we've just defined the terms, right? If you are denying Jesus Christ, you are an Antichrist, right? And like when, say, Revelation talks about this is the final hour, it's more or less talking about like the era. This is the final era that we're living, not literally, 1 hour, 1 day. So nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. And as far as I would say the representation of an actual person, I did just write some examples down of just throughout history, people labeling certain individuals as the Antichrist. So in one of the first examples I have here is in 1517, Martin Luther actually proposed that the Pope is the Antichrist. Then we have, my goodness, we have 1914 to 1945 with the World War I, World War II, and Hitler, the Holocaust, certainly, end times. We have the Cold War era, is Israel becoming a country, and especially with Cold War, anything related to Russia, like you just look up anything related to Russia and it's just like